David's alarm clock screamed at 5 in the morning. He slapped it quiet and rubbed his tired eyes. Outside his tiny apartment window, the city was still dark. He could hear trucks rumbling down the street and the distant wail of sirens. Another day, another mountain of deliveries. He tiptoed past his daughter Maya's bedroom. She was only 7 years old, sleeping peacefully with her stuffed rabbit tucked under her chin. David smiled, but his heart felt heavy. Maya needed new shoes. The rent was due in 3 days, and his delivery app had just sent him a warning. Your rating has dropped. Work faster or lose priority orders. David grabbed his backpack, checked his phone, and saw 15 delivery orders waiting. 15 houses. 15 meals. 15 chances to earn enough money to keep the lights on. You can do this, he whispered to himself. The city streets were cold and unforgiving. David pedaled his rusty bike through traffic, dodging cars and potholes. His breath came out in white puffs. His fingers were numb on the handlebars, but he couldn't stop. Every delivery meant $5. Every $5 meant Maya could eat tonight. By noon, David had completed 12 deliveries. His legs ached. His stomach growled. But he kept going. Then his phone buzzed with order number 13. 1247 Hollow Lane. Soup and bread. Handle with care. David frowned. Hollow Lane was on the edge of the city, where the houses were old and forgotten. Nobody ordered from there. He checked the address again. It was real. He pedaled harder. When David arrived, he stopped and stared. The house looked like something from a ghost story. The paint was peeling. The windows were dark. Thick vines crawled up the walls like fingers. The yard was buried under dead leaves. This can't be right, David muttered, but the address matched. He grabbed a warm container of soup and walked to the front door. It creaked when he knocked. Silence. He knocked again, louder this time. Then he heard it. A voice. So faint, so weak, it sounded like a whisper carried by the wind. Please, help? David's heart pounded. Company policy was clear. Leave the food at the door. Don't go inside. Don't get involved. But that voice, it sounded desperate. He tried the doorknob. It turned. The door groaned open, and dust swirled in the dim light. Inside, the house smelled like old books and sadness. Furniture sat covered in white sheets like sleeping ghosts. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling. Hello? David called out. In here? He followed the voice down a long hallway. His footsteps echoed. His hands trembled. At the end of the hall was a small room, and there, sitting in a wheelchair by the window, was a woman. She looked fragile, like she might break if the wind blew too hard. Her hands shook in her lap. Her face was thin and pale, but her eyes were bright and alive. You came, she whispered. Are you okay? David asked, rushing to her side. Do you need a doctor? She shook her head slowly. I need food. I can't move my hands anymore. David looked at the soup container in his hands. Then he looked at her. His phone buzzed. Another delivery. Another warning. Time was money. But this woman, she was alone. She was hungry. He made a choice. I'll help you, David said. He pulled up a dusty chair and sat beside her. He opened the soup container. Steam rose up, warm and comforting. He dipped the spoon and brought it carefully to her lips. She sipped, her eyes closed. A tear rolled down her cheek. Thank you, she whispered. They didn't talk much at first. David fed her slowly, spoonful by spoonful. When the soup was gone, he helped her with the bread, tearing it into small pieces. What's your name? He finally asked. Elena, she said softly. I'm David. Why did you come inside, David? The others, they just leave the food and run. David shrugged. You sounded like you needed help. I couldn't just walk away. Elena stared at him for a long moment. You're kind. The world doesn't have many kind people left. David's phone buzzed again. 3 missed deliveries. His rating was dropping. He should leave. He should run to the next house. But something kept him there. Do you live here alone? He asked. Elena nodded. I have ALS. My body doesn't work anymore. But my mind is still here, trapped inside. David's chest tightened. He thought of Maya. What if she were alone like this? What if nobody cared? I'll come back tomorrow, David said. Same time. I'll make sure you eat. Elena's eyes widened. You would do that? Of course, David said, standing up. Everyone deserves to eat. Everyone deserves a friend. As David left the house and climbed back on his bike, he didn't know that this simple act of kindness had just changed his life forever. Behind him, in the dark and dusty house, Elena watched him go, and for the first time in years, she smiled. David kept his promise. Every day at noon, he arrived at 1247 Hollow Lane with Elena's meal. Sometimes it was soup. Sometimes it was pasta or rice. It didn't matter what the food was. What mattered was that he stayed. He would sit in that dusty chair, feed Elena slowly, and talk. At first, they talked about simple things. The weather, the birds outside her window, Maya's latest adventure at school. But as the days turned into weeks, their conversations grew deeper. I used to be a painter, Elena said one afternoon. Her voice was stronger now, as if having someone to talk to had breathed life back into her. I painted the ocean. Big, wild waves crashing against rocks. I could feel the spray on my face just by looking at my own paintings. David's eyes lit up. You painted? That's amazing. Do you still have any paintings? Elena's face fell. They're all gone. Sold. Given away. When I got sick, I had to let everything go. That must have been hard, David said softly. The hardest part wasn't losing the paintings, Elena whispered. It was losing the ocean. I haven't seen it in 10 years. My body won't let me travel anymore. So I sit here and remember what the waves sounded like. David's heart ached. He wanted to tell her he'd take her to the ocean somehow, but he barely had enough money for bus fare across town, let alone a trip to the beach. Instead, he said, "Tell me about your favorite painting." Elena's eyes sparkled. For the next hour, she described a massive canvas she created. A storm at sunset, with purple clouds and golden light breaking through. David listened, and in his mind he could see every brushstroke. When it was time to leave, Elena said something that surprised him. David, you're the only person who sees me as Elena, not as a sick woman, not as a burden. Just, Elena, thank you. David squeezed her hand gently. You're not a burden. You're my friend. But friendship didn't pay the bills. David's delivery app kept sending warnings. His rating had dropped to 3.8 stars. Other drivers were faster, more efficient. The app threatened to cut his access to premium orders, the ones that paid the most. He tried to work faster, but he couldn't abandon Elena. Every day, he chose her over extra deliveries. Every day, he lost money. Maya noticed. She was a smart kid. Daddy, why do we eat rice every night? She asked one evening. Because rice is good for you, sweetheart, David said, forcing a smile. But you're not eating. You only gave me rice. David's throat tightened. I already ate, baby. I promise. It was a lie. He hadn't eaten a full meal in 3 days. Then, on a Tuesday morning, everything fell apart. David parked his bike outside a convenience store while picking up an order. He was inside for less than 2 minutes. But when he came out, his bike was gone. Stolen. David's legs went weak. He looked left, right, down the street. Nothing. His bike, his lifeline, his only way to make money, was gone. He called the police. They took a report and said, "We'll look into it." But honestly, stolen bikes rarely turn up. David sat on the curb and buried his face in his hands. Without his bike, he couldn't do deliveries. Without deliveries, he couldn't pay rent. Without rent, he and Maya would be on the street. He wanted to scream. He wanted to cry. But instead, he stood up and started walking. He walked 12 blocks to Hollow Lane. When Elena saw his face, she knew something was wrong. David, what happened? He collapsed into the chair beside her. My bike got stolen. I'm finished. I can't work. I can't feed Maya. I don't know what to do. Elena's expression shifted. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she spoke, her voice calm but firm. David, I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you weeks ago. David looked up, confused. What do you mean? Elena took a shaky breath. This house, it's not what it looks like. I didn't always live like this. I chose to. I don't understand. My full name is Elena Blackwood. The name hit David like a punch. Blackwood. He'd heard that name before. Everyone had. The Blackwood family owned half the city, real estate, banks, hospitals. They were billionaires. You're a Blackwood? David stammered. Elena nodded. My father built an empire. When he died, I inherited everything. But I also inherited this disease. And with the disease came loneliness. People only saw my money. Nobody saw me. David's mind raced. But this house, it's falling apart. If you're rich, why do you live like this? Because I wanted to know who would care for me when I had nothing to offer. Elena said quietly. I wanted to find someone who saw Elena, not the Blackwood fortune. And I found you. David shook his head, overwhelmed. I don't know what to say. Say you'll trust me, Elena said, because I'm about to change your life. She told him to open the drawer beside her wheelchair. Inside was a folded piece of paper, a check. David unfolded it with trembling hands. His eyes went wide. The check was for $50,000. Elena, I can't. You can, and you will, she said firmly. But that's not all. I want to offer you a job. Be my personal caretaker and manager. Help me live, truly live, for whatever time I have left. I'll pay you a salary, enough for Maya's future, your future, everything. David's hand shook. Tears blurred his vision. Why me? He whispered. Elena smiled. Because you fed me when you had nothing to gain. Because you stayed when everyone else ran. Because you're kind, David. And kindness is the rarest treasure of all. David looked at the check. At Elena. At the life-changing choice in front of him. And then he made his decision. David stared at the check in his hands. $50,000. More money than he'd ever seen in his entire life. Enough to fix everything. The rent, Maya's shoes, food that wasn't just rice. But it felt too big. Too impossible. Elena, I'm just a delivery guy, David said, his voice cracking. I don't know how to be a personal manager. I don't know how to take care of someone like you. Elena's eyes were steady and warm. You've been taking care of me for weeks, David. You already know how. But what if I mess up? What if I'm not good enough? You fed me when I was a stranger, Elena said softly. You chose compassion over money, over rules, over everything the world told you mattered. That's exactly who I need. David wiped his eyes. His heart was pounding like a drum. Fear and hope wrestled inside him. This could be the answer to every prayer he'd whispered in the dark. Or it could be a dream that would slip through his fingers. What would I have to do? He asked. Elena smiled. Help me live again. Take me to see the ocean one more time. Read to me. Talk to me. Make sure I'm not just surviving, but actually alive. And in return, I'll make sure you and Maya never have to worry about money again. David thought of Maya. Her bright eyes. Her laugh. The way she hugged him every night, even when dinner was just a bowl of rice. She deserved more. She deserved everything. Okay, David whispered. I'll do it. I'll help you. Elena's face lit up like the sun breaking through clouds. Thank you, David. You have no idea what this means to me. When do I start? David asked. Right now, Elena said. First, we're getting you a new bike. Then we're getting Maya those shoes she needs. And then, her voice grew excited. Then we're planning a trip to the ocean. David laughed through his tears. The ocean? Are you serious? Completely serious, Elena said. I've been trapped in this house for too long. It's time to break free. Over the next few days, everything changed. David cashed a check and bought a new bike, a beautiful, sturdy one that gleamed in the sunlight. He paid 3 months of rent in advance. He took Maya shopping and watched her face glow with joy as she picked out shiny new shoes with sparkles on them. Daddy, are we rich now? Maya asked, spinning in her new shoes. David knelt down and hugged her tight. No, baby, but we're blessed. And we're going to help someone very special. Who? Maya asked. You'll meet her soon, David promised. The next week, David brought Maya to meet Elena. Maya was nervous at first, hiding behind David's legs. But when Elena smiled at her and said, I've heard so much about you, Maya. Your daddy says you love rabbits. Maya's face brightened. I do. I have a stuffed rabbit named Hoppy. I used to paint rabbits, Elena said. Would you like me to tell you about them? Maya nodded eagerly and sat beside Elena's wheelchair. David watched as the two of them talked and laughed. His heart felt full. But the biggest surprise was still to come. One morning, a sleek black car pulled up to David's apartment. A driver in a crisp suit stepped out. Mr. David? Miss Blackwood, request your presence at Blackwood Manor. David's jaw dropped. Blackwood Manor? The mansion? Yes, sir. Please come with me. David and Maya climbed into the car, eyes wide with wonder. They drove through the city, past the tall buildings and busy streets, until they reached the hills. And there, surrounded by gardens and fountains, stood Blackwood Manor. It was magnificent. 3 stories tall, with marble columns and giant windows that sparkled in the sun. It looked like a castle from a fairy tale. Inside, Elena was waiting in the grand entrance hall. But she wasn't alone. Beside her stood a team of nurses, a lawyer, and a man in an expensive suit. David, Maya, welcome to my real home. Elena said warmly, I wanted you to see the truth. All of it. The lawyer stepped forward. Miss Blackwood has made you an official offer, Mr. David. Personal caretaker and estate manager. Salary of $150,000 per year, plus full benefits, housing, and a college fund for Maya. David couldn't breathe. Maya tugged his hand. Daddy, what does that mean? It means, David said, tears streaming down his face. It means we're going to be okay, sweetheart. More than okay. Elena wheeled herself closer. There's one condition, though. David's heart skipped. What is it? Elena grinned. You have to promise. No more making airplane noises when you feed me soup. It's embarrassing. David burst out laughing. Deal. But only if you promise to let me take you to the ocean. It's already arranged, Elena said. We leave next week. And they did. 7 days later, David pushed Elena's wheelchair onto the sandy beach. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Waves crashed against the shore, sending up white spray. Elena closed her eyes and breathed in the salty air. Tears rolled down her cheeks. I'm home, she whispered. David stood beside her, Maya holding his hand. The 3 of them watched the ocean together. A delivery man, a millionaire, and a little girl with sparkly shoes. And in that moment, they weren't defined by money or illness or struggle. They were simply 3 souls who had found each other when they needed it most. Thank you, David, Elena said, for seeing me, for staying, for being kind when the world told you to keep moving. David squeezed her shoulder gently. Thank you for giving me a chance, for giving Maya a future, for showing me that one small act of kindness can change everything. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Elena made one final request. Tell me a story, David. Tell me about hope. David smiled. Once upon a time, there was a man who thought he had nothing, and a woman who had everything but felt like she had nothing. And when they met, they both discovered the greatest treasure of all, a friend who truly cared. Elena smiled. That's a good story. The best part, David said, it's true. If this story touched your heart, we'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below sharing your thoughts. Would you have done the same in David's shoes? Have you ever experienced an unexpected act of kindness that changed your life? Don't forget to like this story if it moved you. Share it with someone who needs a reminder that kindness matters. And subscribe for more powerful tales about hope, humanity, and the quiet miracles that happen when we choose compassion over convenience. Remember, the smallest gestures can unlock the biggest blessings. Never underestimate the power of feeding a stranger, helping a neighbor, or simply staying when everyone else walks away. See you in the next story.